$2 million in debt. Okay, that's just the debt service. That's not for the water yet. Okay, you know, so I feel like you're hiding behind the fact that you're a new town board. Well, it's a town board. Whether you're new or you're not new, your predecessors, there's a consistency of a town board. There's 5 people there. Whether it's you or the next guy, you can't turn around and say, well, it wasn't me. You're always sitting there, you're sitting there saying that last year it was the guys that sat there that did this and that and the other thing. Well, you know what? It was the guys last year and the year before and the year before and 15 years down the road that have been doing this. Okay? So my point is, you're talking about the water district assuming the debt of the town, of the village, okay? Where we're in a worse position, significantly worse position than the Peaceable Hill Water District, because we're saddled with $2 million for 50 houses. That's $40,000 a house. You know, just knock it right off the price of the house, okay? You know, it's unfair to, you know, I think it's unfair. You know, you've been doing a good job of getting it done. Councilman Yee, in one of your things about the breakdown on the thing you had for the engineering, I don't know how much of that engineering was done for Springhouse Water District. But there's a significant amount in there that now that you've passed the bond resolution, the town is going to be getting back. You failed to mention that.
And the same thing with the
Okay?
lease service.
Yes,
So-
Andy, I understand your point. I'm not trying to interrupt you. Go ahead.
You know, that's really all I have to, you know, what I have to say. You can't on the one hand say we're a new town board, you know, and you know, and not accept the responsibility of the previous town board, because it's a town board, okay? The entity is the same. The people may change, but the entity and what you're voting for today is going to outlive you, okay? But it may not outlive
Yes,
me. And I don't have long to go.
Andy, I understand your aggravation with the water situation at Springhouse, and by no means am I making light of it to say that I share it. I share your aggravation at the present status, the debt overhang, and so forth. The silver bullet is the opportunity to finance not just the ongoing capital project to deliver clean drinking water from these new wells, these clean new wells, to the families in the district, but to refinance the debt overhang and the new costs in one bundle and finance it all at subsidized interest rates. That's the best opportunity we have for keeping parity or possibly seeing the costs subside in your neighborhood, and I'm hopeful they subside, and we're working on it, as you noted. With respect to, I understand your point better now, and I thank you for the clarification about the issue, the separate issue of the debt overhang over the village of Brewster. And with respect to that debt overhang, unanimously, the town board, sitting as town board councilmen, 5-member board, not as commissioners, we all unanimously agree that debt has to remain linear, as I term it, over the village. It cannot splash out into the town. That's true of each special district, like Springhouse, as you noted, and other districts. And if we need to form a special district so that it remains operative with respect to the village, if the Attorney General authorizes it, greenlights it, then that's one of our options to do. But by no means are we anticipating that the debt from any special district or the debt from the village will burden town taxpayers. It can't. By law, it can't with respect to the special districts, and morally and ethically, it can't with respect to the village, the possibility of dissolving the village of Brewster. So we're all on the same page on that. And just as a footnote, Andy, to answer your question, and you're welcome to call me anytime. We can talk about this in further detail. With respect to the engineering costs that you mentioned and the bond resolution, and I know you're concerned, and I share it, and our neighbors share it, about the financing, the project financing until we get that subsidized interest rate from the state. what to do as far as engineering costs. And one of our options that we're going to talk about probably next week as a town board and as a community is the possibility that we can have an interim financing within a portion of that bond resolution or that bond, draw a little bit of it off, enough to pay ourselves back, enough to pay ourselves back, loan a portion of it to the special district in order to make the bond payment. And it would have a zero net effect on the finances of the 54 families in Springhouse. I'm hopeful that there's agreement amongst my colleagues that this financing technique will work and be operative and be available, and it would minimize the impact, it would negate the impact financially on the families there for at least, as I anticipated, another year, which should give us an opportunity to close with New York State at the subsidized interest rate that I mentioned. All right, I don't mean to go into too much detail, but I wanted to be responsive.
Thank you.
Can I make
Yes,
one
sir.
comment
Yes.
to your comments? I've been on this town board 2.5 years, and the one thing I've learned more than anything is the issue of water districts in this community and the problems they have, whether it's Peaceful Hill or Blackberry or in the case of Springhouse. And there's serious issues. And I remember those ladies in your neighborhood that had a petition when we first were elected coming around about the problems of the water and explaining how it's much worse when you take a shower. The water getting into the mist getting into your pores is worse than taking a drink of water, and all the problems with bringing in tanks of water and et cetera. And I want to say that we have acted in concert here, all of us, the previous 2 people on the town board and the 5 of us today, to try to get something done there. And Levon and the engineers he worked with, getting those 4 wells dug. I've been out there, that wellhead out there, and there's really been progress. We got held up with the turtles, but that turtle thing has been solved. And we're into the situation of getting the money to do the piping and get it done. But I want you to know that we take this serious, and we're not trying to bag the previous town board or pass it on to anyone else. We want to get this thing done. I know if I lived on Acorn, I would want this thing done yesterday, like I know you do. But we are trying. You have to go through the system. I mean, there's a red tape, and there's engineers, and there's wetlands, and all these things, as you know. But believe me, these water issues are at the top of the agenda, as far as I'm concerned.
I appreciate what you're saying, and I have no problem with what you're saying. But understand that this is exactly what was said back in 1990, 1995, 1997, onward and onward and onward. Okay? This is not a new problem that we're having. This is a new solution. Okay? That's all that's happening.
Thank you. Annie doesn't have a microphone, so
I always thought I talked loud enough anyhow.
Make sure you
My,
get
my wife tells me that anyway. You know, that's all I'm trying to get across, okay? I appreciate what the town board has done recently. I know that it's going forward. I visited the wellheads long before you knew they were there, okay? My property adjoins where the wellheads are being drilled, so I go through my property and I cut across, and I was there when Beal was drilling them. I stood there and watched and talked to the guys, okay? I was there at some point where, I don't know who was out there. They were having a meeting at the front of the property where they're going to do it. I know what's going on over there. But my point is, you talk about debt and stuff like that. We now owe what, about $800,000 or $400 and some odd $1,000, from previous fixes to the problem. Now it's going to cost us, and we don't know what it's going to cost us because no real information has been forthcoming as to what this is actually going to cost us. Okay? We don't know what the property is going to cost us, and I understand the problems with that, so I'm not going to berate anybody about it. But, even the cost, we don't know what the cost of the engineering is. Okay? We don't know what the cost of construction is. We don't know what the property is. The only thing we do know is what we spent on drilling the wells. I think that's the only information that we've ever gotten. And, when we talk about Peaceable Hill, and I know we have a lot of districts. In I think almost every special district in this town is in real trouble. Blackberry, the Heights, ours, Peaceable Hill. You know, I think it's, you know, I think trying to use the Peaceable Hill Water District as an impetus for something, I think is unfair to the rest of the districts, the people in the districts. You know, and that's really all I'm, you know.
I understand. Andy, thanks for your points. If I could just briefly speak to your concern that, or your assertion that all the special districts are in trouble. They aren't. They're all solvent. 2 special districts have present issues of concern. Springhouse, where we need clean water to the families, and we're working on it, as we noted, and Peaceable Hill, which is getting badly gouged by the Village of Brewster through the water rates. Many of those folks are borrowing against the equity of their homes in order to pay their water bills. They're hurting, and they need relief. Hillside had issues. We solved them. Prior town boards have solved other issues. But the bottom line is all the special districts are solvent. They're all okay. And we're working on the 2 that have issues right now. Councilwoman?
Andy, just so that you know, I understand it's frustrating. It's a long haul, but what I would say to you is there is some promise. When I came on the board and Councilman Cullen, there was the issue of the landfill, which many people thought would never see an end. When we first came on the board, we were told that by the end of this year, December 31, 2010, that if we didn't complete work on it, that we would be heavily fined. That was in January. Nobody thought that that would ever come to an end, but it is. It's coming to an end. We moved expeditiously. You know, with fresh people on the board, we're moving it along. And as much as I can promise to you in concert with the other members of the board that we can move this to a successful conclusion, you can see it happen with the landfill. You can see it happen with some other issues that are being presented. So to the extent that we have cooperation amongst the members of the board, I can assure you that we will do everything in our power to help remedy the problems in your area and the other special districts which are facing problems. But one thing I do know is that, you know, we started this conversation regarding consolidation, and I know we've veered a little, but, you know, you can be assured that, you know, to whatever extent that you would be overburdened in your district, that's certainly not what we want, and we certainly don't want any overhangs with any of the village debt. You know, looking at the metaphor of splashing, you know, any of this debt splashing amongst the town. But the bottom line is, I think that, you know, at least this board since January, since I've been on, has moved to providing a solution to a long-standing problem, the landfill. So I'm looking forward to doing that with the other problems. But I thank you, and you're always a very active member of the audience, and I like you to be the conscience of the board, and I do appreciate it.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Item 10, Route 22 widening update, very briefly. The New York State Department of Transportation last night at the Henry H. Wells Middle School hosted an educational and informational meeting regarding the Route 22, continuing progress to widen Route 22. As we all know, the DOT is in the process of widening Route 22 at the intersection of 312 this year. They reported last night they anticipate that project will conclude this year, 2010. And next year, they're going to, as they discussed last night at the meeting, and I'm sharing, they will address the issue of the northbound traffic at the Milltown Road intersection of Route 22. And they'll have the design, eminent domain, and budget next year, and they anticipate breaking ground. They expect to break ground in 2012 on that, early in 2012 when the ground thaws. So they'll have a year to get that ready. During meetings of mine and others in Albany and Poughkeepsie and elsewhere with the DOT representatives, as we pushed them to get busy on Route 22, they had an accelerated time schedule. So I regret that it looks like it slipped a year with respect to Milltown. But that was the information we had last night. And for better or worse, I wanted to share that report with everybody. I'd also like to mention, is there a comment on Route 22?
Yeah,
Sure.
I appreciate that update on that.